What is the deal with the story of Abram and Sarah and the birth of Ishmael? Was it a scandalous situation, or was it perfectly normal in that era of time? Don't go anywhere if you want to know the rest of this story. Welcome to Thus Saith the Lord. I'm Gene Lloyd, and I want to talk to you today about this story with Abram and Sarah, or Abraham and Sarah. You probably know them better by. This is a story most Christians know, when Abram and Sarah were childless, and Abraham, he needed an heir, and there was a reason he needed an heir, and so Sarah gave her slave to Abraham as a wife, and then we end up with Ishmael as a result. Okay, now before we go any further, do me a favor, like, subscribe, follow. Let's get this content out to more people. Some people might be very interested in the reasoning behind this story, so share that with your friends, please. Okay, so let's look at this verse. Now, Sarah, Abram's wife, bore him no children. She had an Egyptian slave girl whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said to Abram, "You see that the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my slave girl. It may be that I shall obtain children by her." And Abram listened to the voice of Sarah. That's in Genesis chapter 16, verse 1 and 2. Now, people looking at this today, they look at this story with a lot of disdain. They look at Sarah with a lot of disdain. Like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? That's crazy, giving another woman to your husband to have children. That's so strange. Okay, that's how we look at it in today's culture. But we need to consider the culture of that time. Abraham had a major responsibility to the community. Okay, he had a lot of people to take care of. We don't know exactly the number of people, but we can extrapolate. We can kind of assume some things. Genesis 14:14 tells us that he had 318 men who were trained for battle. So we might ask, like, where did these 318 dudes come from? And what were they doing with him? He and Sarah weren't just out in the desert hanging out in a tent by themselves, right? The Bible tells us he had a lot of wealth. So he must have had people who were taking care of his flocks of sheep and the other animals that he had, and people who were managing his property. So there were a lot of people with him. And in that time, in that era, Abraham would have been seen as the father of that community, which means he had a huge responsibility to take care of them. So he needed an heir, because an heir would provide long-term stability for the community. Okay, the heir was necessary. So we might look at it as crazy, but it wasn't so crazy after all when you consider all the historical and cultural contexts that go into this. Now, there's a lot more to the depth of this, so take some time to read my article. It's linked below, and that will give you a more fuller understanding and help you see why Sarah most likely did what she did. Okay, now I'd love to hear your comments on this one as well. It's definitely a unique one that we often look at and wonder what's going on in this story. And it's good to wonder that, because when we do, we'll go study it a little bit more in depth. So leave your comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Share some ideas with me about what you'd like me to cover. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.